All right, it's time for some trending crime news with Access's legal contributor. Give it up for my girl, Alison Triessl. Today, we are diving into the complex and heart-wrenching case of Heather Elvis, a young woman who disappeared back in 2013. It's the subject of the upcoming docuseries Vanished, the Heather Elvis case. Now, Triessl, this case happened almost 12 years ago. Why is there so much interest in the story?
It really is a heart-wrenching story, and it's done very, very well. So let me start with the basics. Heather Elvis was 20 years old. She lived in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and she goes missing. And it is a story about a gal that gets involved with a married man. She's working as a waitress at a local restaurant, the Tilted Kilt, and she meets this man, Sidney Moore, who is married. He's working maintenance at the restaurant, and they date for about 6 months, and she falls in love with him. And in mid-December of 2013, she goes missing. And eventually, Sidney Moore and his wife are arrested in connection to her disappearance.
Whoa, so but why is her disappearance such a big story, do you feel?
Well, first of all, the facts and the husband and wife, Sidney and Tammy Moore, play an integral role in her disappearance, and they also really shock the conscience in their behavior while the case is being investigated. Tammy goes on social media and blames both Heather for her behavior and Heather's family, her father, her sister Morgan, and throughout they deny any involvement, and they are caught lie after lie by the police. And so it captivates the town, and of course Heather has never been found. There has always been an ongoing campaign to find her and seek justice for her. But these two, their behavior just shocks the conscience.
What were the initial suspicions or the evidence that led to the arrest?
So pretty immediately, police learn that Heather is having an affair with Sidney. And they question Sidney, they get phone records, they learn that a phone call was made from a payphone near where the car is eventually found, Heather's car is eventually found. They look at her records, they see where the phone is pinged, and when they ask Sidney about the payphone, he says they still have payphones. He denies it. They say, well, we have surveillance that shows you at the payphone. He does admit it. And as police are working through the case and putting it together, they basically are able to track Heather's location, and she's last found at this Peachtree Landing, and they are able to sort of trace the Moore's car, their truck, to that location.
Wow. So what happened exactly on the night of Heather's disappearance?
So Heather goes on a date. She returns back to her apartment at about 1:15 in the morning. She calls her roommate, Brianna, to talk about the date. She explains to Brianna that she has gotten a phone call from Sidney from the payphone, and that he has said, I want to get back together with you. I'm leaving my wife. Brianna, in the docuseries, Brianna says, I told her not to go and see him. She wanted to see him. She wanted to continue this relationship.
Right.
So Heather does go and meet him.
Huh.
And the phone records throughout are what substantiates this. And she is not heard from or seen again. Her car is left abandoned there.
And Tammy was allegedly really jealous, right?
So pretty immediately, Tammy, who at some point claimed that they had an open marriage, that it wasn't a big deal, that he was allowed to do this. The most shocking part to me of this docuseries is when Sidney says, oh, my wife was so upset about it, she had me tattoo her name on my abdomen. The tattoo artist says that she basically said, if you weren't with this girl, this would have never happened. And then get this, Tammy, according to Sidney, handcuffs her to the bed every night. So Tammy handcuffs Sidney to the bed every night so that he doesn't leave.
That's next level jealousy right there.
Yes, it is.
And that's a substantial tattoo.
Yes, yes, it is.
So what were the charges against them?
They were both charged with kidnapping. Sydney was also charged with obstruction of justice, but ultimately they get convicted in separate trials of the kidnapping.
Now, they weren't charged with murder?
No, because a body has never been found, and in these cases, it's very difficult to say there's no body here. A jury could say, well, there hasn't been a murder. So the prosecution slimmed down the case, charged them with kidnapping.
What was their demeanor in court?
Tammy testified, and she ended up being the best witness for the prosecution, horrible for the defense. She was cold. She was arrogant. She called the prosecutor by her first name. And one of the most shocking things that she did is she said, nobody wants to find Heather Elvis more than I do, despite the fact that Heather's family sat there and listened to this testimony. She didn't do herself any favors, and clearly the jury didn't believe her because they convicted her real quickly.
Morgan, I believe, always, of course, was a strong advocate for Heather. Tell us about her.
So Morgan, her sister, has been a fierce advocate for her. They attended all of the court appearances. She also has fought for justice in social media, kept her memory alive. You know, there's always been an ongoing search for her body, and she has been a real advocate now for missing people.
Well, let's not go anywhere, because next, Heather Elvis' sister Morgan and her brother Chris are going to be here when we come back.